everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there, patiently waiting for today's digital episode is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
How you doing, Nikki?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Are you excited to nerd out a little bit today?
I am. I'm excited to listen to the two of you, to you and our guest.
Well, now hold on, because technically, while today is a digital episode, at first glance, it may also seem pretty Mac-focused. But wait, hear me out. This is about so much more than just what kind of computer you use, but how you use your computer to support your life with ADHD. And we have the perfect guest to help us navigate this conversation. Before we do that, however, head over to takecontroladhd.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show for free right there on the website, or subscribe to our mailing list and get an email every time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD, and call us. Leave us a voicemail at 503-664-4ADD and get your voice and your thoughts right here on this show. We sure love it when people call. And don't forget, 5-star reviews on iTunes or Apple Podcasts and recommendations in your favorite podcast player help others to discover this show when they need support. So pay it forward. Drop us a kind review. We sure appreciate it. Bob Dr. Mac LeVitus is a well-known authority on all things Macintosh, OS X, Apple devices. He has been one of the Apple community's most trusted advisors for almost 30 years, helping regular folks confidently wade the complex waters of their gear. He has written more than 80 books, and for the past 20 years, he's written the Dr. Mac column for the Houston Chronicle and the Mac Observer for almost as long. Dr. Mac joins us today to talk about tech and tools and ADHD in light of his latest book, Working Smarter for Mac Users, which promises to show you how to use your Mac better, faster, and more elegantly, how to banish procrastination forever, how to do more work in less time so you have more time for the things you love. Bob LeVitus, welcome to the ADHD podcast.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
This doesn't read as much like one of your other tech books. I was blown away by your introduction. You start this book with a candid picture of your life and your relationship with ADHD and impulse control. In fact, you say here, after lots of therapy, both individual and group, I realized the key to becoming more productive was to retrain my brain. This is an amazing level of candor for a how-to book.
Yeah, and somewhere else I say it's not like my other books. You'll see.
Yeah.
It's very different for me. This is the book I've been wanting to write for, 10 years probably, because I realized that I'm not alone in this. I know there's lots of people that have the same issues as me. And when I looked for help 20 years ago, 15 years ago, there really wasn't much to help you as a computer user. There was lots of help, but it wasn't much help to me because I spend my day at the keyboard of a Macintosh. And so I needed to figure out how to weave that, into everything I had learned about being organized. At the time it was write things down. Now it's just store them somewhere. They don't have to be written, but they do have to get into the system.
Yeah, what does that look like? I mean, what does that look like, your relationship with this sort of idea of productivity on a computer?
After I figured out that I had ADHD and had learned a little about, what was recommended to, deal with it daily, I started to look at what I did all day. and it was shocking how much time I wasted not doing anything productive. And
shocking is the word.
I'm not kidding, because I went on for years thinking I was massively productive, but it took 16 hours a day.
That's right. Delusions of productivity.
Oh, absolutely. But I was busy. I was at the computer. I wasn't, well, wait, I take it back. Sometimes I wasn't. If I could find a reason not to be, I would. And I tell a story in the book. It's like I spent my day avoiding work and doing just as much work as I needed to say, okay, I'm done for the day. But it took 18 hours a day. I was often up until midnight, and on deadline days, it was sometimes all-nighters. Because I was good about deadlines. I didn't miss deadlines, but sometimes I didn't do my best work because I procrastinated too late into the cycle to really do great work.
Well, and that becomes the accommodation, right? You wait for the adrenaline to come in, right?
Well, and sometimes I look for inspiration in all the wrong places. Like, there's no inspiration on television. Trust me.
Maybe I should try going to a movie.
But I'm going to try looking for it.
Well, I used to do that a lot and say to myself, I just need to rest my brain. And you know what I learned? I learned that I think I do need to rest my brain, but I don't need to rest it for 2 hours between 30-minute stints of work. I need to rest it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes between 25-minute stints of work. Mm-hmm. And with that formula, it only takes 5 or 6 hours to do 18 hours worth of work. It was amazing to find that out, that if I skipped all of the procrastinating and looking for inspiration and not working, really I could get everything that needed to be done in a normal workday.
Bob, when were you diagnosed? How old were you?
I was in my, I was in my 30s. I was 30s? Probably in my late 30s.
And what led up to the diagnosis, if you don't know?
One of my friends it's in the book. One of my friends handed me a copy of Driven to Distraction, and he said, I read this, and you know what? I think I have this ADHD thing, but more than that, I think you have it. You should read this. It will change your life. And I read it, and I thought, oh my gosh. Like everybody I've ever talked to, I read it, and I thought, oh, he wrote this just for me. That describes everything that I can't explain about the way my brain works. Everything that I've thought I was just a freak. It turns out it's very normal among other people with ADHD. Mm-hmm. And, it was a big revelation to me. And after reading the book, I was sure. I knew for sure, but I did find a good doctor, and I went through the whatever you call it, battery of screening. And he came back and said, I said, so what do you think, Doc? Do I have it? He said, oh, yeah, you have it. In fact, you could be the poster child for adult ADHD. You have so many of the markers. Yeah. He said, I don't think I've ever seen anyone that I've tested that had so many, high numbers in so many of the markers.
So congratulations.
Yeah, really. Yes. I said, gee, this was great. I didn't even study for this test.
Well, what does that do to you? I mean, I was, I'm in a similar boat, diagnosed as an adult. And I know, talking to others who have been diagnosed as an adult, that the experience of or your reaction to it tends to be a pretty broad range. What was your response to that, to understanding all of a sudden, this is who you are?
It freaked me out, but it just explained so many things that it was a relief. It was like, oh, wow. So that's why, I really had impulse control issues in school. Terrible. Like suspended lots of times for doing things that were way out of line. And the thing is, I thought it was funny. And nobody ever told me. Maybe I needed to. Yeah, I guess they told me, but I didn't hear it. But if somebody had said, you know what, there's a way that you can treat this, that you don't have to be so fidgety in your seat, and you don't have to blow your nose in your teacher's tie to get attention. There's medication, there's therapy, there are things that can be done. Well, I didn't know any of that in school, and I was just this crazy. I didn't know what limits were. I had a real hard time, and I really hated authority. Just think about what kind of a mess I was. I was completely against authority and would rebel against almost any authoritarian deal just for the sake of being against it, just to be contrary. And I like to be contrary. I like to argue. I like to fight. Not fight physically, but argue and debate.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting sort of response too. I mean, because it often feels like, when we don't understand our own relationship to ADHD in the world, that's kind of a tendency, right? It's like people don't understand me, so I'm gonna make trouble until they figure me out.
Or at least I'm just gonna have fun and amuse myself.
Yeah, as long as I'm not amusing others, I will be amused. How'd you land in technology briefly? I mean, was it a natural fit for somebody of your early sort of rambunctious?
It's bizarre. I went to school to become an advertising guy. I thought advertising was a good place for me. It seemed like, pretty loose and free form and a lot of the creative things that I like to do, radio and television and print advertising. I just thought this is the kind of thing that will keep me interested. Much more so than like accounting or, sales. So I studied marketing and I went to work in an ad agency. And after a few years, I realized that I don't do well with bosses. Bosses, I don't know. It's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. You give me a boss and I all of a sudden turn nasty. Can't stand them. And I realized really, I probably needed to look for a career where I could be more self-guided, where I had less, day-to-day, fewer meetings and discussions with so-called peers about what, creatively what to do. I needed to be somewhere where I could just do stuff. And there was no way that was going to happen in advertising until I was like 60. You could see that, it's like you don't get to be one of the deciders until you're old. And I wasn't going to wait. So 1985, the Mac just had come out. And I said to my wife, hey, you know what? Let me quit my job and buy one of these expensive computers. And I can do stuff and make money. And I had no idea.
That went over well.
Yeah, right.
Bless her heart. She knew that I wasn't gonna, I was gonna get fired from my advertising job at some point. I was gonna, do something that was so over the top it couldn't be forgiven. And then what would we do? So I think, it was the lesser of the two evils. It was letting me stay in a job I hated, where I talked back to my boss, and I was a horrible employee.
Or you could leave on a good note and get a new computer out of it.
And give something else a try. And so, I was desperately afraid that I wasn't going to figure out something to do that would make more money than I was making in advertising, which wasn't much. I didn't have a very high bar. And I ran around, I did desktop publishing, and I did some market research, and I redid Chinese takeout menus in my neighborhood because I had desktop publishing, and darn it, I was going to figure out a way to make money from that because I knew how to do it. I knew about type and typography and typesetting. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'll just go all around. And I did. I went all around the neighborhood, and I would get their takeout menus, go home and redo it in PageMaker, and then bring back a laser printed copy and say, I can provide these to you for this much per 100. And if you have changes to be made, I can make them, and it's this much money. And I got a bunch of them that signed up. So I was kind of the menu guy for a while. And I did some market research, and then I was trying to sell this guy some market research that I had done work for before at the ad agency. He was at PC World magazine, and he said, well, I'd love to hire you to do market research, but I got a bigger problem. I just bought a new magazine. It's called Macazine. It's a Mac magazine.
Clever.
And my editor quit. And if I don't find someone to edit this magazine by like Friday, I'm not going to have a March issue or whatever month it was. And it's going down the tubes. And I'm frantic. I just don't know what to do. And I said, I could do that. I had no idea if I could do that, but editing a Mac magazine, wow, that sounded great, And it was work from Santa Monica, and the production people were in Texas, and the owner was in Texas, and so, I thought, okay, I could do this, and I did for a while, and it was great, and the thing is, I knew then I could not go back to having a day job. It just I could see that my personality, just the way my head works, would never allow me to be comfortable there.
Sure.
And I would always be a threat to myself. I would always be in danger of being fired. Now, it turns out today I probably could work for somebody. I've mellowed a lot. And a lot of that is I don't have that nagging, overwhelmed, doom thing hanging over my head all the time. I don't feel like I've got, 6 times more work than I can do today that needs to be done by tomorrow. Now everything feels very manageable and I'm not as intense. So maybe I could have a job today, but before I learned about ADHD and dealt with it, no way. I was a firing waiting to happen.
Well, that leads us to this next question. It's around technology overwhelm, right? And because so much of what you do and have done is to help people, sort of acclimate to their technology in a very sort of peaceful and approachable way. But when you're dealing with this audience, like me and those who live with ADHD, it takes a different sort of approach, right? How do you help people who struggle with impulse control and fear while living with ADHD not feel completely overwhelmed by their tech? And honestly, that leads me to the title of your book, Working Smarter for Mac Users. What does it mean to work smarter, period?
Well, for me, what it means is it's you could boil it down to the mission statement, which is basically do things better, faster, and more elegantly, beat procrastination, and have more time for, do more work in less time so you have more time for things you love. It's just all of the things. It's not one thing or even a handful of things. It's all of the things that it's having a calendar, it's having a to-do list, it's having them work together, it's having a plan for each day, it's using a Pomodoro timer to make sure my butt stays in the chair when it's supposed to. It's using the hide others command so that you can only work on only have one thing on your screen and nothing to distract you, or full screen mode if you prefer. But all of those things, it's all about setting up your work environment so that you can be as efficient as possible. And I'll give you at least a couple of examples. One is most people need to work on their typing. You type, that's how you get your stuff into your Mac or any computer, really. And if you're a crummy typist, if you type 25 or 30 words a minute, you're really leaving a lot of time on the table. If you just spend a little bit of time practicing your typing, maybe a week or two, you'll double your typing speed, which means writing a chapter or a essay or whatever it is you write will take half as long.
Okay, in all the conversations we've had around technology, no one has ever brought up typing. I cannot believe I have been taking that for granted.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Everybody does. That's the thing. Yeah. Everybody does. And it became obvious to me when I was doing a lot of consulting. When people say, how can I be more efficient? And I watch them pecking away with 2 fingers, it just made me crazy. It's like, if you learn to touch type, that would probably increase your output by, 300%. Why don't you try that? And in this book, I even give you a place you can go to take free lessons and test yourself and benchmark yourself against it. And there's even games. If you don't like taking lessons, you can play typing games for free.
Well, and it makes so much sense, particularly for adults who have been, diagnosed with ADHD and struggle with, typing as an input, because there are so many of us who may have straddled that, the learn to type experience in school, right? They don't teach typing anymore.
They didn't teach it to me when I was in school. You couldn't take it if you were a boy. How's that?
Wow.
Oh. Okay.
Wow.
Guys couldn't take typing.
I learned how to type, but it was...
Girls couldn't
and they couldn't take woodshop either?
No. Oh. And boys couldn't take home ec, which really ticked me off. And I made a big fuss about it because I really liked the idea of learning how to cook. And I liked the idea of being in a class with a bunch of chicks cooking.
That's right.
I mean, that was my outlook. But, in those days, you couldn't. It was just not done. We took auto shop or wood shop or metal shop, and they took home economics and typing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm dating myself, right?
I'm dating myself in the sense that when I learned how to type, there were boys in the class, but it was on a typewriter. There was not a computer in sight.
I had to learn. I tell the story in the book. When I ordered the Mac, when I decided I was going to get it, it was going to be a while before it came, like a few weeks, and I realized then that not knowing how to type was going to be a problem, and I bought a typing drill book at a bookstore, and sat it on the table and used my wife's Smith Corona electric compact college typewriter, and I taught myself to type because I had really never typed anything. Yeah. When I worked at the ad agency, we had people for that.
Typists.
Well, yeah. And, I would handwrite stuff because I had good handwriting. I would just write stuff out longhand and toss it in a bin, and someone would type it and bring it back to me to proofread.
It's like Mad Men.
It is.
Yeah, so I never had to learn how to type, and I never really thought about it until all of a sudden I'm getting a Macintosh, and it's got a typewriter keyboard, and I don't know what to do with it. I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. How can I do anything if it takes me 5 minutes to type "Dear Sir"?
Sure.
Right.
Well, that's a fantastic step one that I feel like we have really taken for granted as people who type.
We've never mentioned that before ever.
That is beautiful. What else do you recommend?
All right,
What's next?
I got another one. Here's the thing. I type a bunch. There's a bunch of things I realized that I type every day, a million times a day. For example, I have a bunch of email addresses, and they're not short. They're each 40, 50, 60 characters total. The URL for my book is workingsmarterformacusers.com. I probably type that 15, 20 times every day. Dear PR person, I don't do Windows. Please stop sending me stuff about Windows. I do that about twice a day. And the thing was, I realized I was typing the same things over and over and over again, which has two problems. Number one, I'm not the best typist accuracy-wise, and typing something that's a finger twister, like something with a number in it, or something with weird punctuation, or any of the symbols over the numbers, and I'm for sure likely to make a mistake. And number two, when it's more than about 20 or 30 characters, I know a way to type it faster, and that is to use a snippet expander program. The one that I use on the Mac is called Text Expander, and I'm sure they might even have a Windows version. Again, I don't have Windows, so I don't know. But what it is you type a short abbreviation, and the program sees that and magically types something longer. So, for example, I would type BLC, BobLeVitus.com, and when I press the space bar, it'll expand to my email address, BobLeVitus at BobLeVitus.com. Working Smarter for Mac Users, the book, is WSM. When I press space, it expands out to the whole title of the book. The URL, WorkingSmarterForMacUsers.com, WSA, Working Smarter address. So I remember them with mnemonic devices. They're all 2- and 3-letter abbreviations. And, oh, by the way, the one for the Windows PR people is NOWIN, NOWIN. And I can remember that.
Not to put too fine a point on it.
And I can remember that. So, I just give them short abbreviations I can remember. I've got my address in there. I've got my phone number in there. Those are all I know. So, okay, I type 2 characters instead of 9 characters for my phone number. But when you're doing it 5 times a day, believe me, it adds up.
Text Expander is a wonderful and indispensable tool. I absolutely echo that. And one of my favorite features of it is you can look up in the preferences at how much time you've saved.
Yeah, I was just going to say, here, give me a second and I can tell you how many hours or hundreds of hours I've saved since I started using it. I've used it for a long time, too.
Do you have it handy?
Yeah, let's see.
I'm curious.
Where does it tell me? Is it in help?
It's when you open it and it's in
Windows.
Yeah.
Okay. Characters saved 176,521. Hours saved 7.36 assuming I type 80 words a minute, but I don't. I type 60 words a minute. So let's see what that is. 9.8 hours. And there's a graph here. And July 2017, I've been expanding a lot of snippets.
It's just awesome.
It's a great program. And the thing is, in the book and in the upcoming course, that's one of the things I stress is, you gotta try this.
Yeah.
There's a free trial, and there's actually a similar feature built into macOS Sierra and El Capitan before it. It's in the keyboard system preference pane, and it lets you do almost the same thing, except you can only see one line of text in the interface, which makes it hard to do anything with carriage returns, anything that's multi-line. You can do it, but you can't see it when it's like you have to type blind. Anyway. There is a low-rent version of it built into the Mac, and you could use that for things like email addresses and phone numbers, and see how much time you start to save, and then you can be like me and have, I don't know, how many snippets do I have in my folder? Hundreds.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds.
It's indispensable.
It's great. Once you've tried it and you see how much time it saves you, every day you find something and go,
Well, and
I
just
think
a
I'm
little
going to stick that in there.
One of the things I love so much about it is you can actually download snippet collections from other people.
Yes.
And so, for example, if you type certain, I downloaded an Apple trademark list, which has every product they've ever done. And when you type, the little snippets, it automatically expands it to the way Apple types it for hundreds of products over the years. It's amazing.
I have accented words, which I downloaded, and HTML and CSS phrases, which is really good to have.
Huge.
So yeah, it's just a great program, and certainly for people like us, if you use it properly, if you train yourself to use it and you remember to make little snippets for all of the things you type regularly, pretty soon you will be saving 15, 20, 30 minutes a day on typing things repetitively.
Okay, so your first tip was to learn to type. Your second tip was don't type as much. Let's give us one more.
One more is have a plan for every day and determine what your most important tasks are and do them first.
What does that look like for you?
It's eat the frog. What that looks like for me is I use this thing called a Super Plan Productivity Planning Worksheet. I invented it myself, and I give it away. Well, the thing was I tried a million things. I tried pretty much all of the organizers and planners that you can buy at your office supply store. I tried something I really like called Self Journal, which is, very much indie effort for a bound version of a journal for planning your day. And it was pretty close, but they were like $30 every 6 months. And I'm cheap. So it led me to design something that works exactly the way I want it to. I'm not sure it's for everybody, but it's certainly a good thing to look at and get the idea and then say, okay, I would do that, but I would, instead of having this, I would have this. Because you can do that. It's pretty simple. It's just, it's got down the left side of the page, the hours of the day from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And on the right side, most important tasks, goals, and random notes. And that's the whole thing. And the idea is, with the hours down the left side of the page, I jot down what I'm going to do during any of these time periods in 25-minute chunks. So every half hour, there's something. And I try not to work on the same thing for more than 2 25-minute sessions in a row, because I find that I get more fidgety and more likely to want to not work.
Sure.
So I switch it up. I try not to work on the same thing for 4 hours straight. If I have to work on something that much, I weave in other things. Like if I'm working on a book chapter, I'll stop and I'll do email maybe for 25 minutes, and then I will work on a column for 25 minutes, and then maybe I'll do some reading, and then I'll come back and work on it again, and then do something else, and then do something else. And between sessions, I usually take a 10 or 15 minute, 5 to 15 minute break and do something fun, like like play a game or go for a walk with the dog or play my guitar or something like that. But not work, I can't, you don't cheat and work during your breaks. And if I do that, I'm good for, all day long, every 25 minutes coming up with 25 minutes, then a short break, 25 minutes of work. And then, a couple times, 3 times a day, longer breaks. Longer break in the morning, longer break in the afternoon, and lunch. And then other than that, that's how I do it. It's Pomodoro. And I have a axiom. The hardest part of being a writer is keeping your butt in the chair. So when I'm in a Pomodoro, I pretend that there's glue on my butt and I can't get up from the chair. I'm like physically unable to get up. And if I get interrupted, I have to start the session over from scratch. And you never want to do that.
I have a friend who's a writer and he's worked as an editor and on a number of very, very large projects, and he has the same challenge, the application of butt to chair. And so he actually stapled an old airline seatbelt onto the bottom of his office chair. And that metaphor is remarkably appropriate. He buckles it.
That's very funny. Somebody in one of my classes when I talked about this told me that she bought a belt that's bigger than her waist.
Yeah.
And belts herself to her office chair when she's so that she can keep her ass in the chair. And I said, I just imagine glue. You guys really,
they really take it to the next step.
You know what, though? If that's what works, that's great. And that's one of the things I try to get across in the book is I don't have your answer. I don't know if I do. And I don't know if what's working for me is going to work for you. I really don't. But I know a lot of things that have worked for me in the past or work for me now, or other people tell me they work. And so in the book, I tried to throw it all out there and let you have options, and I basically say it takes 66 days to develop a new habit or break an old one. Let's just say. Mm-hmm. I'm saying 66 because I actually did a lot of research, and that was the best answer I could come up with. They say it takes 30 days or 3 weeks or whatever, and the research indicates it's more like 66 days. So, I encourage readers to find the things that work and use them, but don't give up right away. Don't do it for a week and then say, oh, it was okay. Do it for a month or 2 months. Make it a habit. And you'll see some of these things like, typing speed, using snippets, having a plan every day.
Right.
You'll find that, after you've done it for a while, you'll know if it's helping. And usually, I think these kinds of things do. And if you keep it up, it keeps helping. These are the kind of things that aren't that hard to keep rolling with, as long as you remember to keep doing them.
Sure.
And it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. If you don't do it for a while, you're going to forget and not do that thing. Which is why I recommend my Super Plan worksheets that you print it out and fill it out in pen by hand, and then put it on your desk on top of everything else, or in a place where you can see it through the clutter on your desk if you have clutter. I don't do clutter. My desk is I have one pile. It's a thick pile, but I have one
and
pile.
The daily planner's on top.
The daily planner has to be on top because the idea is you need to be referring back to it. You need to check stuff off as you get it done. Things change during the day. You get a phone call that chews up one of your 25-minute sessions, but it was your boss or your editor, so you couldn't not take the call. And then you have to rearrange things. And, you just do these things, but you don't waste a lot of time on it. I used to spend a lot of time planning because my to-do list ran to like 11, 12 pages. And it wasn't very useful. And so I would spend, a good 15 minutes looking at the first couple pages, trying to decide what the first thing to do today would be. And then when I finished it, I'd be looking at all the pages for something easy or fun. And I would spend a lot of time gazing at my to-do list, wishing I were working, but avoiding it by saying, well, if I just have to look at all the pages because there could be something more important on the next page.
Sure.
So I wasn't very organized about, what to do. Now, with a plan for every day, it's just awesome, because some days I book myself what I think is a reasonable work day, 7 hours in the office, 6 hours in the office. And some days I finish an hour early. And I go, you know what? I earned this. And I'm done. I go play pinball, or I go bowling, or, go to the movies. I just get out of the office and go do something. And I think that's why I can come in and work these 25-minute things and be disciplined about it. Because I know at the end of the day, A, I'm going to feel good because everything is done, and B, the end of the day is going to come at a reasonable time now. It's not like it used to be, where the end of the day came in the middle of the night.
So, Bob, I have a question for you, because I know that there's many listeners out there that agree with what you're saying, but where they get stuck is trying to decide what those priorities are for the day. Any guidance or advice on that? Like, how do you decide what's most important?
Well, I take this form, the Super Plan worksheet, and I have a place for the 3 most important tasks of the day. And the first thing I do is write down the 3 most important tasks before I start putting stuff in the hours. What's important tomorrow? I have to write a series of marketing emails. I have to edit a video for a commercial. I have to write some scripts for the lessons for next week. Those are the most important tasks today. On Friday, it was write my column, shoot the commercial, and work on chapter 12 of High Sierra for Dummies, which is another book project I'm working on. So as long as I know what those 3 most important things are, I make sure that they are taken care of before I move on to less important work and things that are more elective. There's a lot of stuff that I could do, but I don't have to do it today. I look at everything as, if I'm going to finish these big projects, they're all broken down into quotas. So I know, for example, that to finish this High Sierra for Dummies book by my deadline, I have to revise 11 pages a day from here till the end of the month. And that's not a big deal for me. 11 pages a day means maybe a couple hours of work. Okay, I'm good with that, and I can still do all my other things. But that is one of my most important things most days. Today I'm ahead, so I took a day off from writing chapters in the book. But on most days, that would be one of my most important tasks, because there's a deadline in a certain amount of time and a quota.
And it has to be done versus something that could be done.
Right, exactly. Like my course, I'm doing it for me. And so if there had to be slippage, I could slip my course a few days. The deadline of August 1st that I talk about is really in my head. I mean, there's nobody's placed an order yet. Nobody will be put out if it doesn't launch until the 10th of August. But internally, it means a lot to me to hit my date. So it's still pretty important. But if something had to slip, it would be, something that is self-published rather than something that I've got a contract and other people relying on me for.
Well, that actually leads me to my next question, which may sound a little bit selfish at first, because I'm deeply curious about your choices here. You have written an awful lot with a handful of publishers. Most recently, you've spent a lot of time with Wiley and written a lot of books with Wiley. And here you are. This book you have self-published, and I'm curious what went into your decision to self-publish the book. And in the context of ADHD, I find that terrifying, not to have the sort of trusted, let's say, scaffolding of the publishing arrangement. What have you learned over your career?
I hear you.
Yeah, to make that decision.
It took me a long time. I've been mulling it over for probably 5 years, and I only pulled the trigger last year. And the thing was, first of all, Working Smarter for Mac Users, as I conceived it, wasn't the kind of book that publishers were interested in. My agent asked me to write it up the way I would write up a pitch for a book, and I did. I wrote it. I wrote the proposal, and we put it out there, and nobody wanted to publish that book. They came back and said, if you would make it more about this, we could do it. Or if you did an automation book, maybe.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to do a different book than I had envisioned, and that was part of it. And the other part of it is, when you and I can't say enough nice things about Wiley. I mean, I've written a lot of books for him, and I still have contracts with him. And next year I'll be writing books for him if they don't fire me. And I love him for books like Mac OS X for Dummies, iPhone for Dummies, mass market books. And really, they're the best choice for something like that. They will sell the most copies. For something like this that's deeply personal, there's a big difference between getting 5 or 10% and getting 70% or 100% of the selling price. And I am willing to spend a lot more effort marketing a book that I have a personal stake in. I can't afford to do a lot of marketing for my Dummies books, and partly that's why you go with a publisher, because that's what they do. But on this book, I couldn't find a publisher that wanted to publish it, and second, if I had, they wouldn't have gone out and, contacted people and gotten on podcasts and offered people sample chapters and done all the marketing and PR stuff I'm doing.
Right.
And I wanted that to happen. So in order for it to matter, I had to own it outright. And so I do. And it's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, I don't think I'm making as much money yet, but I think I will in time. And I'm learning a lot about marketing. I'm also much more in touch with my readers. This is like I have a direct connection to these readers. I have their email address. They're on a list. You bought my book. I can send them an email and say, I'm working on version 2.0. What do you think should go in there? I can't do that on a Dummies book. I have no idea who's read a Dummies book. Right. They don't share that with me. And if you buy it at a bookstore, they don't share it with anybody. Right. So this way, I've got a direct connection to my reader and my student for the course, and I like that. I mean, I'm not looking to have 10 million followers. I'm looking, for the few thousand people that this will benefit. And I know they're out there. I mean,
I'm one of them, Bob.
And they're finding me, and I'm finding them. So
I can benefit from this, believe me.
Well, did you get your copy? If not, I'll drop you a note after the show with the link to it, because you should definitely have your own copy.
Absolutely, you should. It's fantastic. This has been a great conversation. It would not be a true digital episode if we didn't nerd out a little bit on the systems that you are using, that you rely on to get your work done every day. Tell us about your gear and your favorite software that you're using.
Okay. One thing I did a few years ago that was really great was I pared back to a single computer. So I used to have a desktop and a laptop, and the whole keeping them in sync thing was a real hassle. And so I bit the bullet and bought pretty close to a top-of-the-line spec MacBook Pro. I've got a separate monitor on my desk for it, so I can work and grab it and run out the door and not have to worry about if I forgot a file or if I copied the file to the other computer or anything like that. Big screen monitor, second display, big thing for me. I just feel much more productive when I have two displays and lots of screen real estate to lay everything out the way I want it. A lot of times when I'm working, I need to look at something, write in a different window, and possibly, have my timer somewhere where I can see it, and some system diagnostics that I need to keep an eye on when I'm editing video, so I don't overheat and things like that. I use Apple stuff as often as I can, so I use Apple Mail, I use reminders, Apple Reminders, I use Safari and Chrome, Apple Mail, and
where do you do your writing?
I write it's funny. For books, it's been Microsoft Word because that's what they require.
Sure.
And for my own stuff, I've been writing in either Pages or Ulysses. I like them both. If I didn't have to write for books, one of them would become my, go-to everything writing tool. Let's see, what else? Oh, okay. I built my website with Squarespace, and that's really great for people like us because HTML was beyond me. Actually, code is beyond me. I'm not a good coder. That requires a different kind of focus that I don't have. I just can't, I can't even remember all of the things, the tags and things for HTML. I have to have a book on my desk.
Sure.
And so Squarespace has been great. For like $12 a month, they have templates. You just basically throw your own pictures and words in, and it builds a beautiful mobile-friendly website with a store, and you can take money from people, all for $12. Not for $12. I mean, you don't have to learn. What is it that everybody's got? WordPress. You don't have to buy WordPress add-ins or consultants. I mean, I did it myself, and literally anybody could do it. It's so non-techy. It's all drag and drop on-screen stuff, and my website's the most beautiful website I've ever had, because I'm so terrible at it. And in the past, I've had to use traditional you build the website tools. So this is great. It just takes all of the pain out of my website for me. What else do I use and love? Well, we talked about
Text Expander. High on the list.
Yeah. I also really like Keyboard Maestro. It's a macro program. It lets me pretty much reduce anything I do to a single keystroke. So I launched my programs or switch programs with it. It's got a multi-clipboard, which is a big thing for me. I like having 100 clipboards, not just one. And so a lot of times, rather than deleting stuff when I'm writing, I cut. Then it's on the clipboard. And then I can go into Keyboard Maestro's multi-clipboard and find it tomorrow or the next day. I go, I cut that piece, and now I wish I had it back. Well, in the old days, I used to save multiple versions of documents, which made for a really messy hard disk. You'd end up with 13 versions of a document.
Right.
And you'd have to rename them. You'd be responsible for naming them something meaningful and things like that. So being able to put stuff in the clipboard and have it available for the next few days it's a winner once you get used to it.
Oh, truly. That's something we've never talked about on this show, and I think we really should. We live in sort of a Command-C, Command-V kind of a universe, and having the 100 levels deep is pretty powerful.
It's totally powerful. Yeah. It's one of those things where I don't understand why Apple doesn't just do it. I guess because having the user interface for it could be bizarre. Yeah. But the thing for me is, I hardly ever use it without looking. It's like I don't want what I cut 2 minutes ago. I want what I cut yesterday or the day before. And that means, opening something and paging through a bunch of pages. And, that's not something you can do without looking from the keyboard. But I don't understand why Apple, is single clipboard. It just seems archaic.
Arcane, yeah.
I've always had multiple clipboards with something, and Keyboard Maestro, it's like I'm using it for other stuff anyway, so I might as well use it. I also have one called Copy Clip 2 that was $5 for people who don't want a full-blown macro program.
Sure.
That works great. So those are the kinds of things I use a lot. I also have been, as a solopreneur, I've been using, mailing list program, mailing list software as a service, and all sorts of stuff.
Well, you got the high level ones, and this is the thing that's most interesting to me is just the level of the sort of complexity of the tools, or I should say the simplicity of the tools that you count on to actually do the work of your day, that using Apple Mail and Apple Reminders to help keep you on task and
it's funny,
efficient.
I had a period where I tried all of the Getting Things Done programs, Getting Things
Hallelujah.
Done.
Yeah.
Getting Things Done is a very famous productivity program by David Allen. I read the book. I bought a lot of stuff over the years trying to implement GTD in my life, and I ultimately realized I was spending way too much time on GTD that should have been spent getting things done.
Right.
I was spending a lot of time organizing and tagging and making sure things were categorized right, and then going through and doing my review. And it's like, hey, you know what? There's a lot that's good about this, but the rest of it's not for me.
Right.
So, it doesn't work for me. Simple is way better. And that's why reminders, it turns out, is fine.
Yeah.
It has multiple lists if you need them. It's got alerts. It's got location-based alerts. Those are awesome. So I can say to my iPhone or my Mac, I can say, remind me to get a 12-inch needle nose pliers when I'm near Home Depot. Or remind me to get milk when I'm near H-E-B Grocery. And because those things are in my phone book, it knows where they are. And basically, when I drive near them, it'll ding me on my phone and say, hey, buy milk or buy a 12-inch needle nose pliers.
That is living in the future right there. Those kinds of things, they're amazing.
That is totally cool for people like us, because I forget stuff if I don't get it in the system somehow. Mm-hmm. And having Siri to put it in the system and having location awareness
to get it out of the system.
Well, to pull it out of the system at the right time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just awesome to me, because otherwise I would put it in reminders and it would sit in there until the next time I opened the reminders app and looked. Mm-hmm. This way, if I'm over near whatever it is, boom, it tells me, you need to stop there, which is delightful. And the truth is, none of the other programs, using Apple's programs lets you use Siri to access some of their features, if not all of them. And a lot of the third-party programs, like there's a lot of Getting Things Done apps that supposedly, help you implement the Getting Things Done system on your Mac. And like I said, I spent more time with getting things done than actually getting things done.
Sure.
So I don't know. I tried them all, and I came back to, you know what? I really just need something that can do simple reminders. And as far as organizing the stuff, I use reminders for the long range. Like everything is in reminders or calendar somewhere, but I don't go down to the granular daily level on either of them. Mm-hmm. The daily level is on my written sheets. Mm-hmm. And things that are important from there, like if I have something that's been on there for a couple of days, I'll put it into reminders, because obviously I'm not doing it right now. And if it's something that needs to be done, I will put it in my do sooner rather than later. And then when I have time, I open that up and go through those things, which are all things that, aren't really critical, but I'd like to do. It's just I don't want to even think about it when I've got big projects on my desk, like, finishing this course or finishing this book on time. When that stuff's done, when I don't have so much deadline pressure, I'll open it up and pull out a bunch of that stuff and move it to the super plan worksheet where it'll get done. But for now, it's in the don't forget this folder.
Yeah, right.
Someday.
This is just a wonderful set of tools, and I hope you'll shoot us the link to the super plan worksheet. We'll put that in the show notes for folks who are interested to see how you do that.
Please do, and also if you go to workingsmarterformacusers.com/free, you can download super plan and a couple other goodies.
Oh, outstanding! We'll put
Please do that
directly in the show notes.
And I sent you the link so that people can read that introduction that you read.
You did?
You're feel free to put that in the show notes, and they can read the prelude and look at the table of contents. And
well, and I will say I've been looking at the book on my iPad, and it is just again, it's such a rarity to read a technical book, or a book that is not technical but about technology, that comes at it from a perspective of for someone by somebody living with ADHD, and you can feel it throughout the whole book. I just love the perspective, and deep thanks, Bob LeVitus, for joining us on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and letting me talk about this to a different audience than I'm used to. I mean, I'm used to talking about my stuff to Mac users at Mac clubs and Mac conventions, but this is, I think, the first time I've ever I didn't know there were user groups for ADHD, but this is like the first time I've ever done an ADHD user group, and
Awesome.
it was cool. No, I'm gonna keep contacting other communities of ADHD people,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I didn't really write it thinking it's a book for people with ADHD. It's a book for anybody that doesn't think they get enough done.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it really does have You remind me that it has a unique
we don't get enough
perspective.
done. Yeah, yeah, that's right. We're there. This has been fantastic. Working Smarter for Mac users. All the links in the show notes. Thank you so much on behalf of Nikki Kinzer.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes,
Thank you, guys.
Bob, Dr. Mac, LeVitus. We will catch you next time right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.